From brokenness to breakthrough, this is Failure into Freedom. I'm Katie Holt Lehrman, a mom, wife, entrepreneur, and survivor, here to share my story of walking away from domestic violence, finding healing through faith, and learning to live free. Each week, we'll talk about resilience, hope, and the truth that no matter your past, you are never too far gone for freedom. This is real, this is raw, this is Failure into Freedom. Let's dive in. Hey friends, and welcome to my first ever episode of Failure to Freedom. My name is Katie Holt Lehrman, and I am so thankful you're here. This podcast is going to be a safe space, a real and raw place where we talk about things that aren't always easy, like domestic violence, abuse, trauma, and the lies that try to hold us down. But more importantly, it's going to be about hope, healing, faith, and the truth that you are not defined by your failures. I'll be sharing my story piece by piece, and along the way, I'll give encouragement, scripture, and resources that I pray meet you right where you are. I want to start by giving you a little glimpse into my story because I believe we connect most when we are honest. From the outside, my life looked picture perfect, but behind closed doors, it was far from the truth. I was 19 years old in a bar that I had no business being in when I met my ex-husband. He was 26. I was Twitter-pated, as one would say, with him. He spun me around the dance floor, and the rest was history. 2 months later, after meeting, we were engaged. Within a year, we were married. By 21, I was holding my first baby in my arms, trying to figure out motherhood, while already living in the shadows of control, emotional, and physical abuse. I was 22 when we were separated and was pregnant with my second child, and 23 by the time I had my second child. And at 24, I found myself divorced and a single mom of 2 babies living with my parents, trying to survive, heal, and rebuild a life I never imagined would be mine. At first, the warning signs weren't so obvious. They showed up in little ways. Our very first thing that I remember looking back, besides him showing up at my house in College Station, Texas at 5 o'clock in the morning after he punched his employer in the face and lost his job, that was definitely the first red flag that I ignored. But the next one was I was working full time. I was going to class full time at Texas A&M University, and he was 26 years old, sleeping on the couch during the day while I was working and going to class, and drinking anywhere between a 12 to a 30 pack of beer plus a fifth of whiskey. And then I would come home from work around 9:30. We would go out dancing and go to the bar and do the process all over again. Well, one night there was a concert and I bought us concert tickets to go out dancing to. And I got home to wake him up, and I was so gentle about waking him up. It wasn't even that, it wasn't like coming in and like throwing water on him or shaking him vigorously. Like, I came up to him and I just shook him on the couch. Like, I just gently shook him to wake him up on the couch. And he shot up like as if oh gosh, I don't even know how to describe it. It was so violent, so volatile. And I just sat there in shock. I got called everything but a white woman for waking him up. And then he stormed off into the bathroom and shut the door. And I remember sitting there being like, one, what just happened? But two, oh, this is familiar because this is how my parents acted towards each other when I was a child. They were very volatile. They would slam the door. If they couldn't use their words, they just consistently screamed, yelled, and cussed at each other when they were mad or frustrated, or they screamed, yelled, and cussed at us as kids. And then they would slam the door and then walk back in the room as if nothing happened. And then we would walk outside to the public or the community or church, and nothing happened. We were picture perfect. So it was familiar. So I was like, oh, this must be the person that's for me because this is exactly what was exhibited to me as a child, what a healthy, quote unquote, marriage relationship was. So as things progressed, I always just brushed it off. And I thought, well, maybe this is just like I said, this is familiar. This is what marriage is. And maybe I'm just the problem. But those small red flags turned into bigger patterns. Eventually, emotional abuse became physical abuse, and I walked through miscarriages, childbirth trauma, and moments where I honestly thought my story would end in death and silence. I know what it feels like to sit there in fear, and I know what it feels like to believe no one would believe you. Trust me, I had several people tell me they didn't believe me. And still to this day, they don't believe me, even though I have several court cases. You can look this person's name up and you can see. I know what it feels like to stay because leaving is scarier than the pain you're already in. But here's the thing I also know. Freedom is possible. You can choose to leave. You can choose to say enough, which was the hardest thing I ever did. But it was also the first step towards the life I'm living today. One verse that became an anchor for me is Isaiah 61:1, and why I'm stepping out in faith and doing this podcast. It says, "He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners." When I was in the middle of my story, I didn't feel free. I felt trapped and alone. But looking back, I can see that God was already planting the seeds of freedom in me long before I ever had the courage to leave. Maybe you're listening to this right now and you feel like you're a prisoner to your circumstances. Can I remind you? God sees you. He's not far away. He's holding you in the palm of his hand, and he's working even in the places you can't see yet. So why did I start Failure into Freedom? Because I believe our rock bottom moments can actually be the soil where new life begins. What I thought was the end of me and my family became the beginning of a chapter I never imagined. In this podcast, yes, I'm going to be sharing my story, but it's also about creating a place for you to feel seen. Whether you lived through abuse, whether you're in it right now, or whether you just want to know how to support someone you love, I want you to know that you belong here. If you are listening and you are hurting, I want to talk to you directly. If you are still in it, you are not crazy. What's happening to you is not love, and you are not alone. If you've left but feel broken, healing takes time. There's no timeline for your freedom journey. Give yourself grace. And if you've never experienced abuse, but you know someone who has, the best gift you can give them is to listen, believe, and walk with them without judgment. Wherever you are, there is hope and there is a future. You are worthy of love, peace, and freedom. Before we wrap it up today for this very first little podcast, I want to be honest. It took me a lot to hit record, even for this first episode, which is funny. If you know me in real life, you know that I love to talk. But I really felt a calling. Sharing your story out loud can feel scary. Showing y'all my inner wounds that I'm still trying to heal post 6-7 years later, it's very vulnerable. But I also know that silence never set me free. The truth always did. So here I am showing up and inviting you to come along with me. Each week, we'll talk about a different piece of this journey, the red flags, the breaking points, the healing, and the faith that carried me, and the freedom that I'm walking in today. Thank you so much for listening to my very first episode of Failure into Freedom. If this encouraged you, would you go ahead and hit follow so you don't miss what's coming next? And if you know someone who needs hope, please share this with them. Next time, I'll be diving into the first few red flags. Yes, there was more than I already prior mentioned. There was probably millions of them, actually. And why it's so important to recognize them, especially early on, so you get the heck out of Dodge. Remember this, you are not defined by your failures. You are free to step into the life you were created to live. This is Failure into Freedom. Thanks for listening.